Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Dragonbound and Dragoncaller rare machine that is coming on Monday, April 23rd. So, the Dragonbound Dragoncaller, or DBDC, is arguably the most powerful and valuable egg machine to roll in that is not the traditional rare machine. And this is because not only does it have amazing chase cards at the top, but it also has incredible value at the 5-star or lowest rarity. So this makes it really the ideal place to spend your magic stones, because even if you fail to roll the top prize cards, you are going to be left with the consolation prize of some of the best 5-stars in the game. And in all honesty, they are actually worth pursuing. So if you go in with the mindset or mentality that you want to roll the 5-stars, you're not really going to be disappointed, because A, they are valuable, and B, if you are actually able to roll one of the higher rarity cards, you're probably gonna be quite happy. So in all honesty, this is where I feel that the average player should be spending their magic stones, because once again, it's going to provide you with a lot more depth and variety to your monster box that you cannot replicate outside of the regular rare egg machine. So in addition to the 3 new cards that have been released, like the Heroine rare machine that we are having this week, the Dragonbound Dragoncaller cards, at least the older ones, received Limit Break and Super Awakenings, or at least a stat bonus for their weapon assist evolution. So this helps provide and give them additional value or relevancy, especially when playing through solo mode. So this video / article will summarize my thoughts and opinions on all the cards, as well as giving you a general understanding as to how you can utilize them on various teams. So this rare machine has 3 different rarities, as 7, 6, and 5-star bases, and it does have 2 top prize, well, 2 7-star cards, but only Ideal is really the good chase card, so to speak. And there will be the evolved forms of Cotton and Nay available at the same time, but for the purposes of this article, I will not be discussing them. But just for you know, Cotton is incredible. She was the winner of the Monster Points survey, so she can be purchased for 1 million Monster Points. And in all honesty, rolling duplicates of her, or even purchasing duplicates of her, is not necessarily a bad thing. So in terms of overall viability, this machine is quite heavily stacked. Like, this is the only one that's had this many S tier cards and A tier cards. Like, these again are my own personal rankings and my belief. Again, take them with a grain of salt as well as a starting point, and don't just accept them as absolute truth, because just because one card may be valuable does not necessarily mean it's good for your box if you are lacking the tools to utilize them well. So despite the fact that this machine does cost 10 magic stones, each roll at the very worst, at least the 5-star rarity, will sell for 15,000 monster points. So you may or may not necessarily want to roll this if you are trying to gun for Cotton. Like, if you do roll this heavily and you walk away with too many Chisels like myself, you may want to sell some of them off, and that can help you reach 1 million monster points for Cotton. I plan to release a video / article for Cotton, as well as the Gacha Dragon event that's coming also on Monday. Lots to write about. So without further ado, let's dive into the Super Awakenings. So Super Awakenings are a special type of awakening that are given to cards that are able to be limit broken. Now, just be aware, just because a card can be limit broken does not necessarily mean it can receive a Super Awakening. But in the case of the Dragonbound Dragoncaller, all the cards that can be limit broken can receive a Super Awakening. So just bear in mind that it's going to cost you a Super Snow Globe Dragon, as well as a plus 297 to re-roll until you get your desired awakening. Now, this is obviously a modest to a very high investment depending on what stage of the game you're in. So do not Super Awakening or Limit Break / Super Awakening card unless you actually plan on using them in solo mode, because these awakenings do not activate in co-op. If you wish to read more about Super Awakenings, feel free to click my previous article there. So the first card is Ideal, and Ideal is really the ideal card to roll. So in terms of what she can do, she has the exact same active skill between her 2 distinct evolution forms. She does 2 turns of delay with a Dark Kali style board changer, so all 5 colors plus hearts. However, it's her awakenings, especially in her light form, that set her apart and make her absolutely amazing. So her light form is bind immune and provides you with 10% health to your total team. So that 10% health for the total team is quite meaningful. It's basically like having a solo mode badge for your team. So multiple ideals obviously stack on each other and make yourself extra beefy and tanky. However, it's the 777 combo awakening that makes her unbelievably powerful. And in all honesty, that somewhat makes her the best sub in the whole game, because you have a meaningful active skill. You are a great color, because light is a very valuable one to have. You've got a personal 8 times damage. You're bind immune, and your super awakenings, while not necessarily super flashy, you do include the plus 5% health. So with that in mind, you can actually achieve reasonable amounts of health on a team with Ideal on it. And the best part is Light Ideal has 1,503 recovery and almost 1,300 weighted stats. Like, she is just so incredible. And the fact that she's animated and she can actually equip Dragon Killer Latents just make her so valuable on basically any team that actually can utilize or wants to make various combos, because she's just going to do so much for you overall. Now, with that being said, Light Ideal is naturally the best choice. However, if you lack any ideal leaders to use on your teams, you can make Dark Ideal. So Dark Ideal has a stronger leader skill because it's just combo, not Rainbow Claws based, and it does ramp up reasonably high once you hit 10 combos. However, it does get eclipsed or outclassed by other options out there. So what I would do if I were a newer player and was fortunate enough to roll Ideal, I would make her Dark Ideal if I did not have any other better leader at the time, and use her, because it's going to be a great transitional stepping stone leader, because A, you have bind immune, you have decent stats, you also have bonus movement time, so it can help you learn how to combo. But then when you do eventually roll a stronger leader in the future, you can easily just reverse the evolution and convert it back to Light Ideal, so then you have that stellar sub once again. So it's great because her evolution is not incredibly difficult to actually do. It's just modestly challenging. It's not too bad, so this is going to definitely help out. So the only real drawback of Ideal, in all honesty, is the fact that she is difficult to roll and you really want to have multiple of her. So just the fact that she's very rare is going to be kind of her main drawback. But otherwise, you want to go for Light Ideal for the 777 combo, and only Dark Ideal if you have no other viable leader available. I do basically I just summarize all the points for my pros and cons, but I expand and elaborate them here. So I guess one thing I didn't touch upon is Dark Ideal does have Guard Break, and even though she doesn't have a health or recovery multiplier, she does have bonus team health and bonus team recovery. Not quite the same, but at least it is still something. So now we have Jolla, who is a brand new 7-star card, but unfortunately you got a 7-star card and it wasn't Ideal, and he is by no means very good overall. So if we look at his awakenings, he has 4 Dark Rose, so already right away you know that Rose are not in a good place, because, well, in all honesty, Rose just don't really fit in well. And the fact that one of them has a follow-up attack is even more baffling, because you're not going to be able to trigger your full multiplier, or at least a large amount of multiplier damage, because you're not making those rows in order to stick in that column of hearts. So then we look at his Void Damage Penetration Awakening, which at least does have value. He's bind immune, he does have decent stats, and I guess in theory, if you can form the box as well as the row, you do get some damage output. However, their active skill is kind of what is their strongest selling point. It's basically like a Dark Yogg. You get a bi-elemental board of hearts and dark. So that type of board changer is arguably the best you can get, because you get high combo count and you have healing and damage output at the same time. But in addition, you have 4 turns of bind recovery and heal 40% of your maximum health. So it's quite a powerful, well-rounded active, but unfortunately his awakenings and his leader skills are not really keeping abreast. So in his Dark Red form, you do have potentially 100 times damage and 4 times health, but you have very little recovery. So it's you can tank big hits, but you're not going to be able to sustain yourself very well. And 100 times damage, it's all right. It's not incredible. Yes, you could stack rows and maybe something becomes meaningful at that point in time, but in all honesty, it's not that amazing. Like, it is reasonably orb hungry. And again, when you get hit by gravities, you're going to have a really tough time actually sustaining and heal yourself back up. Sure, you can rely on his active skill, but that's going to eventually run out. But I guess on the bright side, his base active, which forms the bi-elemental board, has good synergy with the Void Damage Penetration or Box Awakening, because you're going to flood the board with those Dark Orbs, so it makes it much easier to form those 3x3 box as well as other combos alongside of it. So it does at least have decent synergy there, and even though he does not have any extra true offensive awakenings like TPA 7 combos killers, I guess the rows can help, but then if you're using dual leaders, you do at least have 2 cards with that Box Awakening, so you might be able to deal meaningful amounts of damage that way. If we look at his Dark form, same active skill, but his leader skill transitions or changes quite significantly. He can scale up to 30 times damage with 30 connected Dark Orbs. So on a 6x5 board, if you create a full board of Darks, you're going to have a 900 times multiplier. everything's going to die at that point. Even if you have that fall of attack and you don't even get the rose, you're still going to kill absolutely everything. Well, you're going to only have 25 dark orbs potentially. But even so, 25 times 25, quick math, that is hard. I don't even know. I'm not going to try. 625 maybe? Still more than enough damage to kill things. So that is interesting for the most part. But unfortunately, that leader skill is incredibly orb hungry. You get 1 times multiplier per connected orb. So just a row or 6 connected orbs is only 36 times? That's like, what is this? This is like 2015? 36 times is not going to do much damage, unfortunately. So it's a little awkward, and I guess we will one day get reincarnated evolution Satan, which can produce a full board of dark orbs, who is technically farmable, but quite resource expensive to do. So you could have a really luxurious button swipe farming team, but okay, sure. And that's why I feel like Jolla is not that great of a card overall, because you honestly have much easier, more budget-friendly options for the most part, and 900 times sounds sweet, but it's probably just overkill for the most part. And now we come into the 6-star cards. So we have Weld, and Weld has actually quite a powerful active skill. It creates a tri-elemental board of fire, water, and hard orbs. So that's like Norn or Erd, basically. So it's not a bad board changer, but also throws in a 1 turn of delay on an 11 turn cooldown. So you're basically adding on 3 turns of cooldown for 1 turn of delay. Not a bad trade-off because, well, even if you don't use the delay, at least you have a nice board changer, and vice versa. You get the delay, you have a nice board changer. But he did not receive any Super Awakenings because it is his weapon assist form that he's going to be primarily used as. So his weapon assist form allows him to donate a TPA, a Water Orb Enhance, and a Fire Resist Awakening. So that is quite meaningful because you are able to give yourself basically 5% damage reduction against fire cards. So not a bad thing. And the TPAs can definitely help out against spawn or on cards that already naturally have lots of TPAs. So for example, Scald is a very popular card to run on various teams for the follow-up attack. So sticking Weld onto Scald gives you triple TPA and double 7 combo. So that can be quite meaningful, but the main drawback of Weld is that the TPA itself is not necessarily the greatest thing in the world. Most cards don't have TPAs that are super amazing. They tend to just have 7 combo awakenings and kind of just leave it at that. So the TPA is not really adding that much extra value. And another problem is the actual board changer itself is not that meaningful because we don't really have any premier water or fire teams currently available. So it makes it a little harder to justify using Weld as an inherit when you want to actually have more colors possibly available. So for example, let's say hypothetically we want to utilize Weld's inherit. So we need to find like mono fire or mono water. So off the top of my head, mono fire teams, Diara is quite powerful for the most part, but again, it's kind of like niche for the most part at the same time. We have Blue Sonya, who's arguably one of the best water leaders at the moment. Can't use the board changer, so that's kind of awkward. A monocolor or a mono blue hunter team could work in theory, but most people don't run a mono blue team. They have a wider kind of variety of cards to stick in as many 7 combos as possible. So again, it's a little hard to fully utilize Weld's active skill, and that's kind of putting a bit of a damper on his overall usage. However, the 5% Fire Resist Awakening does have merit on Kiri teams who do rely on basically swapping the opposing spawn into fire and therefore vastly reducing the damage. So adding in an extra layer of damage mitigation can be meaningful, as well as the actual board changer being useful for that team because they're usually blue and the hard orbs help you at least heal up, and the delay can actually get you out of a bind if something goes wrong. Next, we come to knees. So yes, I do have my knees in the camera. Maybe this is good planning, or maybe it's to help my back. But the point of the matter is, knees has actually become quite a powerful card. So her active skill is kind of, it's okay. You do have a nice powerful 50% heal. So for teams like Edward, great, you're back into your damage threshold zone. Excellent. You also do get to change fire to dark orbs. Well, we don't really mind. Water orbs to wood. Again, these active skill changes are not necessarily super amazing unless you're using like a Cami team. But the main selling point of knees is that she has so much health. Like, she has a stupendously high amount of health. Sticking on super health latents is also going to pump that numbers up even higher. And that's her main draw and appeal. You basically stick her on a team that does not have a health multiplier, and suddenly your team has massive amounts of health. So that is quite meaningful because things like Edward or Cammy, who have those who have like the health conditional leader skills, you're able to stay in your zone a little bit longer, so that can be helpful. But on the drawback, she only has 4 awakenings. Granted, her 4 awakenings are at least quite powerful, it can be a little hard to compete against other options. But thankfully, her super awakenings are some of the strongest in the game. You can say, well, I could get more health, but sure, we don't need that much health. Let's go for the second 7 combo. So with dual 7 combo, she at least provides you with 4 times personal damage against basically any spawn when you hit 7 or more combos. So that is quite meaningful. You suddenly have a card with massive amounts of health, who does have a self-healing as well as an Awoken Bind Clear. And that Awoken Bind Clear actually has great value in content like Altarena, where there's a lot of Awoken Binds, but not necessarily actual card binds. So Knees can potentially replace Odin Dragon as a much more offensive card. You do lose out on the recovery component, but you do have the health component. So again, pros and cons depending on what type of team you're actually utilizing. So Knees is definitely a lot stronger than she used to be, but again, the main problem is she has much lower value in co-op mode because those super awakenings don't actually take effect, as well as having naturally low base recovery. Next is Tardis, and Tardis is a special spaceship that Doctor Who flies in, but in Puzzle & Dragons, he is a dragon-like buff guy. So he has a 1 turn cooldown active skill that gives you +1 seconds to orb movement time, but we really just care for the fact that it's a 1 turn active skill cooldown because that provides amazing value for teams that have the active skill clause. So for example, Anubis is one of the most powerful leaders in the game, and he needs to use an active skill every turn to unlock his full multiplier. So utilizing Tardis can solve your problems, as well as somewhat basically trivializing Gunma, who doesn't even have his super evolution yet, as well as the need for Diao Chans, because Tardis only occupies 1 slot, has massive amounts of health, and basically is what you basically want in a sub. Furthermore, his super awakenings give him a void damage penetration, so he has even more value and utility because you were already wanting to run him. So now you may not actually need to run a pixel card or something of void damage penetration on your teams. So Tardis' stat distribution is very heavily skewed to health. So again, teams like Bastet and Anubis love that health stick because it helps them achieve higher levels of health to survive new thresholds of pain. So again, very valuable. Decent attack. The TPAs can be utilized, but it's not as important. And even though he has very low base recovery, the fact that he has 3 team recovery boosts is going to provide significant amounts of healing overall. So even though his stats are heavily distributed to health, he's actually providing a decent amount of healing overall. So Tardis has definitely jumped up in power just because of that void damage penetration. But the biggest drawback of Tardis is that there's no skill boost on him, and that can be quite difficult sometimes because Anubis already only has 1 skill boost, and based on the team composition, you may be heavily lacking in skill boost to have actually active skills charge up fast enough. So that can be a little problematic, but in all honesty, you can definitely work around it, and Tardis is still quite powerful. However, his value and usages go beyond a sub as well as a damage penetration card because he actually still has a respectable leader skill. When you actually activate an active skill, he provides you 100 times damage. No combo clause, you just need to use wood cards. So this can actually sweep through a lot of content. Pop 1 active skill, 100 times damage. Very easy. Match that TPA, even more explosive damage. However, Tardis can act as a pseudo like Liu Bei or Pixel Bracky replacement, especially now that he has zone void damage penetration, because you don't necessarily need to use those as a leader. You can use Tardis as a leader. And even though he is vulnerable to binds, if you don't have those cards and you have lots of Zeus Dioses, it may be meaningful enough to run and justify. So next we come to Lee. And Lee is very cute and adorable, and they come with the very valuable inheritable leader swap. Yes, there are lots of cards out there that have a leader swap active skill, but only 2 can be inherited. And that's important because now you can actually utilize the leaders you want to instead of swapping in a Tengu and be like, what do I do with this Tengu? So leader skill is not important. All we care about is the actual leader swapping active skill. So it has, oh shoot, that should not say that. It is a 22 turn cooldown. Ignore that, there's a typo. But a 22 turn cooldown as well as providing a 3 times attack to dragon type cards. So with a leader swap, you're able to basically start the dungeon with something more desirable, either a 7x6 board generator or a Ganesha. And if you use Ganesha, you can abuse or benefit from extra rank experience as well as in-game gold. But with 7x6, you have a lot of staying power because you've suddenly transformed the board into a bigger one, and then basically all teams perform better on a 7x6 board because there are 12 additional orbs or 14 total combos available. So this has incredible value, and I want to kind of elaborate how the leader swapping actually works. So the leader swapping works is by you entering the dungeon with a leader that provides you with the bonus you want. So for example, let's say we enter the dungeon with Diao Chan. That gives you a 7x6 board, and you enter with a friend Anubis. But at the same time, you're running Anubis of your own as a sub with Lee inherited. After a period of time, I believe it's 8 for Anubis plus 22 Lee, so 30 turns, you can swap your Anubis into the leader's swap spot, and then you have dual Anubis on a 7x6 board, so you have much higher activation consistency, as well as being able to take advantage of a bigger board. So that's basically the general gist of how leader swapping works. And if we compare Lee to Matcha, Matcha is a better leader swapping card overall, because Matcha has 1 turn less cooldown, as well as providing what is arguably a more universal and beneficial secondary effect. Matcha gives you a 75% damage reduction shield. Lee gives you a 3 times boost to dragons. In most cases, I would generally prefer the shield, but in some cases where you are using teams that have lots of dragons, say like Riku for instance, which is all dragons, the damage burst can be meaningful. But again, if you have at least one of those, you're solving a lot of problems. Now, obviously combo teams have an advantage in 7x6 because, well, it's easier to hit those higher combo counts, but color cross teams have the most advantage on 7x6 because color cross leaders are restricted. They can only make 3 crosses on a 6x5 board, and really good luck skyfalling a 4th cross. So on 7x6, you can match significantly more crosses and your damage just shoots up to like astronomical levels. However, another valuable point is that with a larger board, you are able to hit more combos, so you can make your color crosses as well as hit a high combo count. So this has meaning. So for things like Roshana and Diara, who are very powerful color cross leaders, having a 7x6 board to work on is going to make your life significantly easier and more pleasant overall. So in essence, Lee basically makes almost every leader stronger, provided you can actually stall long enough to swap back into place the ideal pairing you want. Next, we come to Enra. And Enra is another 777 combo awakening card. So again, 8 times personal damage. But unfortunately, she is a little bit overshadowed by Ideal, because Ideal is just generally a stronger option overall, because Enra's base active skill is not that great because she overfloods the board with fire orbs, because it's a double orb changer to fire as well as removing hazards into hearts. So that's not bad, the hazards hearts, but double orb changing into fire is going to result in a very difficult to combo board. So it's not as great. And with a 9 turn cooldown, it's a little bit harder to inherit over. So you have to actually be very quite careful and mindful of what you're actually going to be utilizing as an inherit to make sure it actually comes up in time. Now, she is at least bind immune, so you have that going for you. And again, most of her value is in the 777 combo awakenings. However, she is able to form a modest leader. She's going to be acting kind of like Yogg, except she has a much lower multiplier. But the 777 combos does somewhat compensate. But unless you have tons of cards with 7 combo awakenings, your overall damage output is going to be lower. And because your multiplier is lower, using pixel cards for that void damage penetration is not going to result in as much efficient killing as Yogg would, because again, your multiplier is lower. But even though Ideal is a stronger option, Enra is still amazingly powerful because it's going to provide you with massive amounts of damage. And I guess one thing I should touch upon is that her super awakenings are not the greatest, but they're okay. Like, you can argue that maybe the cloud resist can be useful in niche situations, but it's probably the L increased attack is going to have a little bit more value because at least it pumps her damage up a little bit higher, as well as providing the utility of unlocking orbs when you match an L. Now we come to Distil, who's a new 6-star card. So Distil main selling point is his active skill. It provides you a 75% damage reduction for 3 turns, as well as 2 times damage for Dragon and Devil type cards for 3 turns on a 20-turn cooldown. So this is very similar to Indra's style shield, like at least non-reincarnate Indra, where you get the 3 turns of damage reduction, which is very powerful because you can basically tank and survive through lots of spawns that would have normally killed you. And if you needed to stall or dance around for whatever reason, this type of shield is going to save you. However, that damage amplification part is adding 5 turns to the total cooldown, so that can be seen as a drawback, especially if your team does not really have many dragons or devils on it. However, there are lots of situations where you need to have a shield and damage enhancement at the same time. Most notably is like you want to burst through something quite scary and powerful, but also have a shield for a preemptive on the following floor. So, for instance, in Altarena, you do have Divine Queen Hera, which is hitting you for a stupidly high amount of damage. But before that, some of the dragon spawns are actually very durable. So having the damage reduction shield to save you from DQ Hera, as well as having a little bit of damage augmentation, can be meaningful. So this is also quite powerful because Distil is blue, and for the most part, most of the shielding options, aka Indra, is light. So Distil can transfer stats to blue cards. So your Amatsu can now gain on color stat transfer for a shielding active skill. So that can be quite meaningful and powerful. And it does open up some new options for team building or inheritance overall. However, another thing to keep in mind is that they do have modest potential as a sub because they do have 3 skill boosts, which is kind of rare, especially for blue. Blue doesn't have much skill boosts for the most part, so this can be meaningful. And the double L Awakenings can provide some merit on blue Sonya teams, but unfortunately, I would honestly rather have 7 combo awakening cards than L awakening cards for blue Sonya teams because it's a lot easier to match 7 combos than an L overall. And for the most part, most cards have 7 combo, but not many have the L awakening. So I would use Distil mostly as kind of like a more budget option sub for the most part. However, as a leader, they do have 5 orb 1 enhanced prowess. They do 144 times damage, which is not bad. It's kind of like reincarnated Yomi, except he doesn't provide any enhanced orbs on his own, so you have to rely on subs for that. But you have a much more reliable damage reduction component at 7 combos, which you can hit even if you don't go for the 5 orb 1 enhanced. So overall, Distil's main appeal is definitely his active skill, but 3 skill boosts in water is quite meaningful overall. And now we come to the 5-star cards. So Rathios has a 35% damage reduction shield as well for 3 turns, as well as making columns of fire and light orbs on the outermost ends. So it's an okay active skill. If you are requiring those 2 orbs for activation, obviously it's great. But his main appeal is obviously going to be his weapon assist evolution. So his weapon assist evolution provides 2 light rows and a single time extend. And this had more value overall beforehand, in my opinion, because those extra light rows did help Yogg teams kill Cosmic Trinity spawns a bit more efficiently, because that little bit of extra damage could help propel less ideal or optimal teams to killing level potential, so that does have value. Unfortunately, Cosmic Trinity is not that popular, it's not that valuable to run for the most part because, well, the drops are, sure, they're kind of nice, but they're not that powerful or potent overall. So a little bit less diminished value, so less value for Rathios overall. However, some people may argue that the time extend awakening can be meaningful. Now, for the most part, most teams don't really need more time extend. Like when you think about it, like you should have more than enough if you're running cards like say Yuna or New Year's Yomi. Like there's a lot of cards that do bring lots of time extend, so you may not actually need it. And it's kind of almost wasteful, quote unquote. However, if you're playing something like Amun, who needs all the time extend in the world to form those boards, it can be meaningful. And maybe if you're playing a 7x6 team that does not have much time extends, maybe that can help as well. So it is pretty niche and situational overall, I feel, where the time extend can have value. And for the most part, most players won't have that much value from it. And that's why I feel like he's a little bit of a weaker card overall for the 5-star rarity. Next, we come to number 6, and number 6 has a no Skyfall active, as well as providing 7 fire orbs on a short 5-turn cooldown. So that short 5-turn cooldown is great because you can easily inherit something over top of it, and then throughout the dungeon, you can just pop his active skill throughout it because it's probably charged up in the meantime. So that does have some implications for damage control because you can control the number of combos you make, as well as preventing certain colors from being matched. So let's say there's a color absorb somewhere in the dungeon, you pop a no Skyfall active, you don't have to worry about the color absorb provided you didn't actually match it when you moved your orbs around. However, number 6's main appeal is his triple God Killer Awakenings. So with triple God Killer Awakenings, you are going to he's going to be dealing a personal 27 times damage against God-type spawns. So you're going to basically obliterate them, because if you have basically any multiplier is added onto that basically, and you're going to be dealing spectacular amounts of damage. So it does obviously lessen the ability to have damage control, provided it's a God-type spawn. But number 6 is definitely a very situational card you want to use. But when you use him, he's going to do his job so well. And this is he's one of the 3 or 4 main reasons to roll this event for the 5-star cards, because of these incredible killer awakenings. Now, his super awakenings are all right. You do gain the L unlock or L boosting damage, so it's a little bit more damage output, a little bit more utility. But for the most part, it's his God killers that are his big shining point. But just bear in mind that he does not have any skill boosts, and of course he's only effective against God-type cards. Next is Kiri, and Kiri is another triple killer awakening card. However, she does have strong leadership potential because she's able to form one of the strongest cheese teams available. So with triple dragon killers, she's naturally going to be able to obliterate any dragon type spawn, which is great. You have situational usage, but when you do use her, it's going to make your life significantly easier. However, I want to focus on her active skill and leadership potential. So her active skill is on a 16 turn cooldown, and it changes all enemies' attribute to fire, as well as providing 1 turn of haste. So you might think, well, that's kind of interesting. It's like a pseudo damage enhance, because changing it to red means water type teams, including Kiri, do more damage. However, it has beautiful synergy with her leader skill. So Kiri's leader skill basically provides you with just one Kiri provides 75% damage reduction against fire type spawns. So basically you change the opposing boss into fire, and then you have massive damage reduction against red or fire type spawns. So that's very important, because then you can basically grind out and cheese a dungeon, so to speak. So you'd be utilizing gravities as well as true gravities to basically chunk down bosses and basically eliminate them and stall back up for active skills. So while this playstyle may be kind of slow and may or may not necessarily be that exciting overall, it's quite safe and quite powerful. And it's going to definitely open up a lot of doors for players who do not necessarily have all the super endgame meta teams, because now they can suddenly start clearing content that was out of reach normally. And cheese teams of the past utilized the puppeteers for their basically attribute swapping active skill, but Kiri comes with it built in, and she's the leader at the same time. So you're saving yourself that 250,000 monster point purchase, as well as basically having your leader reduce damage significantly. However, the main drawbacks of Kiri is that she is vulnerable to bind, so you must have some sort of solution for that, as well as the actual active skill having very little value on traditional teams. It's mostly meant for herself when she is being used as a leader. And now we come to Julia with a K. So her active skill gives you bonus movement time by 1 second, and changing the outermost columns to water and dark. So water and dark columns are good for blue Sonya teams, because then you're guaranteed those L's, which can be helpful in niche situations. However, that time extend overriding can be useful, because say you encounter dark as a Nami, you can override her time debuff. Niche situation overall, but it's worth mentioning. However, she did gain some value with her Super Awakenings, because now she has double 7 combo. Unfortunately, this Super Awakenings only function in solo mode, so you have to be using Kulia in solo mode. And in all honesty, Kulia, while having double 7 combo, is not that great of a 7 combo card or damage boosting card overall, because the active skill is not that helpful for most teams. And again, a lot of the game does obviously revolve around co-op mode, so once you stick her in co-op mode, she's lost all her real value, and she is arguably one of the weakest cards in the whole event, because, well, doesn't have that much usage, and in all honesty, should just be a transitional card. And to be fair, you really shouldn't be investing those super snow globes and 297s into her, because it's quite resource intensive for a pretty small return on a mediocre card already. Next is Chisel, and Chisel is a he that I've rolled 9 times in the last event out of 22 rolls, so that made me very sad inside. However, Chisel can crush the hopes and dreams of not only Mantastic, but all devil-type spawns because it has triple devil killer, which results in 27 personal damage against them. Furthermore, Chisel has 2 skill boosts, a reasonably short base active skill that does not break hard orbs, as well as removing hazards and a turn of haste. Furthermore, their leader skill does provide 7x6 boards, so you can have Lee or Matcha swapping, and it has great synergy with Roshana teams who would possibly even want to run Chisel as a sub. So a lot of value overall, in all honesty. And the only drawback of Chisel is that it does compete with Mito, so to speak, for devil killing prowess, and Mito does technically surpass Chisel in killing just pure devils. However, Chisel, because Mito can equip 3 devil killer latents. However, Chisel has the ability to equip other latents like Dragon Killers. So then, when they use 3 Dragon Killers in conjunction with their triple devil, they can obliterate Dragon Devil spawns, which are common in Cosmic Trinity as well as other encounters. So lots of merit and value there. So Chisel is definitely something you want to roll, just not 9 of them. Don't be me. Be much smarter than that and only roll a couple of Chisels. Again, the Super Awakenings are all right, but generally speaking, you probably want to go for the L Awakening because that does provide a little bit more damage. Maybe Clouds, maybe Health. They're all reasonable. They're all mediocre overall. Nothing super standout. And last but not least is Prowline. I'm not going to say the name properly, but they're the final new card to be added into the Dragonbound Dragoncaller event. And their active skill changes Water to Light Orbs and Dark to Heal. So it's kind of almost a throwback to like the Andromeda and Wukong style cards where you're able to basically generate the primary color orb and hard orb. So while mono color teams are not as prevalent overall, it's still actually quite useful to have because let's say you're using Edward, you can concentrate your board and hopefully result in much more light orbs to basically punch significantly higher. So it can have situational usage as a sub or an inherit. And a good aspect of Prowline is that they have 2 God and 2 Devil Killers. So while this does make them less specialized compared to number 6 and Chisel, it does make them do even more damage if the spawn is a God and Devil at the same time. It's actually 81 times personal damage, which is truly outrageous. So Prowling does give you a bit more flexibility, so to speak. If in dungeons where there's gods and devil spawns, it might be better to run one of them instead of having to get a Chisel and a number 6, which can clog up your sub usage overall as possibly even active skills. So Prowling kind of does a bit of both, and it's quite powerful for the most part. And the fact that their active skill can boost recovery does have some meaning. Let's say you get your recovery nerfed by whatever spawn, you can override it. Not many cards can do that, so it's at least worth mentioning. So overall, it is quite a powerful new card to be added into the Dragonbound Dragoncaller event, and it does help provide even more value. So in my opinion, 4 strong cards at the 5-star rarity out of 6 is very good value. So in conclusion, the Dragonbound Dragoncaller event is arguably the best event to roll in for Puzzle and Dragons. And that is because, wow, it's a long article. That is because there is so much value at the 5-star rarity, because even if you are shooting just for 5 stars, you're not going to be that disappointed because 4 out of the 6 are very valuable. And if you do end up rolling a diamond egg, you're going to be quite happy because, well, it's hopefully quite powerful. It might be the ideal, but even if you get Tardis, Enra's, Knees, like, you still shouldn't be that upset for the most part. So I would encourage the average player to roll quite heavily in here, especially if you're missing the cards you didn't participate the first time it came around. So let me know what you think about this event in the comments below. Do you plan on heavily rolling, and who do you hope to acquire if you do end up getting lucky? Hopefully all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best of luck in your own pad adventures. I plan on writing about Cotton as well as the Gacha Dragon event coming on Monday, hopefully on Sunday. So hopefully all have a fantastic day, and happy puzzling.